So the first one, what do I really want? Now, in the book Crucial Conversations I mentioned, they actually offer 4 questions that you should ask yourself when you're trying to discover the question, what do I really want? Or answer the question, what do I really want? And here they are. The first one is the key, because what happens when we ask ourselves these questions, usually our first pass at it is not completely accurate. We tend to distort the answer in our first answer to these questions to justify our behavior. I'll give you an example from my life. So, my wife and I, the first half of our marriage, we had a number of themes or reasons why we would tangle. One of them was related to, let's just say it this way. My wife, September, has a relaxed relationship with time. And my coworkers and family will tell you, I do not. So the repeated pattern, I show up early for something, and then she comes late. And in the gap, I fume and whine and tell myself stories. And what would happen is we would have these repeated arguments, and each time we'd end up just a little further apart. So I know these questions. I'm going to like a coffee shop or something. I'm supposed to meet her there. I'm early. She's not there. I'm angry. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So I'm actually going to try this. So I got a journal out because I knew I'd have some time. What do I really want? I would like a responsible wife. The first answer to the question is almost always not the answer. It usually justifies your behavior. And so if you don't do the work, if you don't sit with it, then what happens is you proceed the way you were going to go, and the gap widens. So I sat with it. What do I really want? Okay, it's probably not that. I want my time to be honored. Okay, that feels a little closer, but that's not it. And I literally had to work it and work it and work it till I wrote these words. I want to be valuable. I want to feel valued by my wife. That was it. Now here's the thing. My wife was late to everything, but when I experienced her lateness, I took it personally. It was about me being unimportant. So what do I really want? I want to feel valued by my wife. How would I behave if I really did want this? Probably the opposite of how I'm behaving. What do I not want? I don't want more distance with my wife. And what am I acting like I really want? More distance from my wife. Do you see how important this shift comes if you answer the question, what do I really want? Because if I didn't do that work, here's what would have happened. What do I really want? I want a responsible wife. So I keep hammering and hammering and hammering, and over time I wear her out, and she starts to show up on time just to shut me up. I would have got what I asked for, a responsible wife. I would have got what I asked for at the expense of what I really wanted. Because I would have got what I asked for, and I would have gotten more distant. I would have felt less valuable, but not in touch with that's what I wanted. And my wife and I would have gotten worse and worse and worse, and both be surprised why. Do you see how important it is to really sit with these questions? What do I really want? Before you have the conversation, because it's so easy to answer the question in a way to justify behavior that will give you the opposite of what you want. What do I really want? It may help you, the question we've asked every week, what do I want this pain to turn into? What do I really want? Sit with that for a long time before you enter a difficult conversation. The second question we have to ask ourselves before we go, what's really going on here? What is really going on here? 2 mistakes we're going to avoid. The first one is being indirect or minimizing, making the issue small. It's easier to have a difficult conversation when the issue's small, right? It's less scary. Probably the most common explanation for a difficult conversation that doesn't go well, that doesn't result in a kind and courageous conversation, that doesn't close the gap, that isn't loving our neighbor, is because we soften or we are indirect. So a couple examples. So years ago, we moved into a new neighborhood, and my youngest daughter, who's also named September, came to me and she said, and she named these two girls, and I'm not going to say their name in case you're here. Can I go play with these two girls? And we were pretty new, but it was very clear these girls kind of ran wild in the neighborhood. We were new to the neighborhood, and I didn't meet their parents yet. I really didn't want her to go play with these girls and go running out there. She's 8 years old. But I'm writing a paper. And I don't want to have the war that comes when you tell a kid you can't go with your friends because I'm not sure I like them. So here's what I said. Timber, your room is a disaster, and I've asked you several times to clean it. You need to stay home and clean your room. Now, any of you parents who have tried that cowardly move, you know exactly what happens. So any other day, it takes September 2 or 3 weeks to clean that room. But when she's motivated, kids get clean room superpowers. 8 minutes later, it's like, clean. Because I didn't have the kind and courageous conversation with September, now I have a way harder conversation, which has to include, I'm sorry that I wasn't straightforward. So I'm even less motivated. And so I could dig myself into a deeper hole. And that's how gaps come, one step at a time. Difficult conversations that didn't happen or didn't happen well. Here's another very similar story. So several years ago, there was an open position in the department that I lead. It was a director-level position, so there was a nationwide search, and a guy applied to the job who looked pretty good. Turns out that during the economic downturn, he got laid off. He was a pretty good level pastor at a church out of state down south. Big church, thousands of people. They laid him off. So I asked him, John, do you have a sense why they let you go and not somebody else? And was there an issue with your performance or a problem? No, there wasn't. I asked them. It was purely financial. My department was the easiest one to let go. All right, that happens. So I called his boss. I called the senior pastor of this megachurch down south. Your ex-associate John is applying for work at my church. How was it working with John? And he said, it wasn't that great. John kind of works to his own rhythms, and so he really never connected with the staff. He's not really a team player. We'd have all hands on deck activities. He wouldn't show up because his priorities, he's too hard, his boundaries were too hard. None of us connected with him. It didn't work out. Well, first I'm fuming that the applicant didn't tell me all of this stuff when I interviewed him. And then I asked the senior pastor, how did John respond when you gave him this feedback? And he said this, I'll never forget it. I'm not sure we told him. And I didn't mean to be a jerk, but I was so sorry. I went, what? And he was a little perturbed. He said, look, we're a big church, we move fast, we don't have time for lots of meetings. So this man, with a wife and 4 little kids, can't find a job. This man who probably had a growth edge never had a chance to grow, never got a chance to get better and be a great pastor and be someone that you keep at your church because they lacked kindness and courage to have the difficult conversation required to love their neighbor. The consequences of not having the crucial conversation, not having the difficult conversation or doing it well, just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Really important. We don't minimize and we're not indirect. We really have to sit with what's really going on. What's really going on? We're getting some sense of what we want. What's really going on? The other mistake that we can make is that we can catastrophize. We can make it giant. We can exaggerate it. And how we do that, those of us that are a little highly strung, we're more likely to do this, is that we confuse what we're experiencing, the facts, the observations, with the story we tell.